This is gonna be our special guest tonight. Is the family's co-founder. OUSSAMA has been doing the first meetup in Berlin ever. Is gonna talk about the difference between mercenaries and missionaries in the startup world, and this is a topic that we are really fascinated and passionate about. I hope you too. I hope there's gonna be a lot of questions after that, and we're ready to talk about it a little bit after too. So I would love that you give a huge round of applause for OUSSAMA for his talk.
So hello everyone. My name is OUSSAMA AMMAR. I'm one of the co-founders of the family. Very glad to be here. If you want, we can try to do this speech dynamic. We are in a small crowd tonight, so you can ask questions and we can create the debate ongoing. It's a very important question for us because one of our very difficult part in our job at the family is to select who get in and who don't. And we have lot of debate around why we should take someone or why we should not take someone. And one of the problems in the startup world is that you can have a lot of rationalization about what people are doing. But one of the few issues around that is that it's really hard to judge a startup because most of the time this rationalization is a very small timestamp of the startup. If you look at startup, what is important is not what they are, it's what they can become. And evaluating what people can become is much harder than evaluating what they are. And so you try to find believe, you know, in your definition of how things can go in the future. And one of the most appealing thing we found out in 4 years is that believers always win at the end. And believers are kind of strange animals in the startup world, and that's what I want to dig on. So few numbers about the family. We take a lot of startups because we are wrong most of the time. So if we want to make some money at some time, we need that someone is lucky. So we have taken in France 515 startups. By the way, we have to update that because we are almost at 600 now. To tell you, on 600 startups, we have 120 startups that have an actual value, meaning that they raise some fund, or they are profitable, or they have some assets that have something. It's more than just a bunch of startups. It's also a movement, in the sense that we are not shy about sharing what we think and what we built. And one of the most important things when you discover the family is that we are very radical in our approach. And in a sense that most people are uncomfortable with, and that's fine, because it's our first filter. It's how you create a wall and keep people outside, is by being very tough and very radical. But it doesn't mean that anything we say is not changeable. So if you know us in France, you know that actually we are very flexible. It's just that between every flexible moment, we are very tough. It's like we don't give any idea the occasion to change easy. You know, you have to fight to change our mind. But we are very happy to change our mind, and especially because we are in ecosystem, startups, where everything changes all the time. There is a lot of things that are true in some contexts, that are not in others. So there is some kind of hidden hypothesis you have to agree with us. And one of that is that we are in the business of building big companies. And that's very important. We are not in the business of building good startups. There is a difference between a good startup and a big company. Every good startup cannot become big companies. And if you look at our business model, we take 5% at creation, nominal price, meaning that after 4 rounds or 5 rounds, we have maybe 1 or 2% inside the company. So you have to understand that our business is about making this 1 or 2% very meaningful. Because Hugo's salary is very expensive. You don't imagine how much we have to pay him to come to Berlin. It's it's like our cash burn explode because of that. But joke aside, it's for us building a thought leadership and building a doctrine about what we think is as important as being into action. And usually there is a like a kind of dispatch between the people that think and the people that act, and we try to do both. We think very deeply about what we do, but we also act without thinking most of the time, and we see which one works best. We have a theory about company building that is very important, is that companies are much less important than people. And that's a theory that seems to be in the startup land very common, but in the fact it's not. If you speak to investors, they love to say that they don't judge project, but they try to find good team. And if one day as an entrepreneur you go and pitch a startup, pitch an investor, sorry, what he will ask you? He will ask you what you are doing, what is your business model, how do you make revenue, how do you grow, what is your metrics, blah, 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 how you build your product, blah, blah, blah. But he will not ask you how you was as a kid, what do you enjoy in life, what makes you special, why you believe you can win. Because actually he doesn't really care. Because in the grand scheme of things, people that put money inside startup, they always have this feeling that people are replaceable. And what is important is what people do. In our experience, we know that a good team with a very, very bad idea makes much more money at the end than a bad team with an incredible idea. But the problem is how you don't get appeal by that. Because the problem is when people pitch you stupid things, you want to tend to think they are stupid. It's a very natural path. And when people pitch you things that you really believe in, it can get very easy to forget who they are and just be like, yeah, it will work out. And every time we did that, we regret it. So we built this theory about company building that everything comes down to the who question, much more than the what question or the how question. And the problem with the who question, it's a very tough one to be honest about. You know, a lot of people, when we refuse them at the family, they always want to know why. And I cannot say the truth. The truth is most of the time I don't like the face. And it's judgmental. It's not rational. It doesn't make any sense. But it makes sense in our business on the long term. Why? Because our goal is not to be right every time about the companies. Our goal is to be right all the time about the people. Because if we are right about the people inside the community become friends, and the people that like each other, they work for something bigger. And on the long term, with a lot of catastrophe on the way, somehow it will work out. Because maybe your startup will fail, but you will become an employee in a successful one. And maybe your startup will fail, you will become an employee in one startup that failed, and altogether you become employee in a startup that succeeds. But at the end of the day, what is important is that you can trust the people inside the community, you can be friends with them, and so our very often criteria of selection is, do we enjoy spending time with people or not? And so if we take a group of 500 or 400 people every year, we enjoy spending time with them, at the end of the day, maybe some of them will be successful and they will pay for everyone else. Because you don't need to be rich, you just need to have friends that are rich. It's the first step of being happy. So you don't really need to be successful yourself, you just need to be surrounded by people that are successful. And by the way, when they are successful, you want that they like you, and so it's better to select them early on that base. So all of that to say to you, don't think we have rationality. So by the way, when we refuse people, we often say that the market is not big enough. Favorite excuse. Works most of the time. So if we tell you, in your case, it will be true. So, obsession over the who question. And we start to develop a theory about what makes a good team. We learn few things. The first thing is that the start of a very good entrepreneurial team is determination. Like really what makes the difference between one team that succeed and one team that don't, it's how much determination they put inside their company. For example, I have a founder that lives in my house right now. My wife loves him. He was supposed to come for 3 days. We are 3 months later. And he basically lives in my house because he's ejected from his apartment. And basically, the company ran out of money 6 months ago. There are 7 in the team, and they are still working. Like that kind of things, you cannot fake it. Like that kind of things mean that somehow, maybe not this shitty company, but at one point in his life, they will succeed. It cannot be otherwise. Because you cannot put that level of determination in doing something, put your life in that jeopardy, being forced to live with me. Like in the horrible thing that can happen, it's top in the list. But you cannot be like that and not at some point doing something meaningful. And why? Because they really believe in what they are doing. And that's the first difference between missionary and mercenary, is that the good thing with missionary is their irrational part. You know, everyone wants to be the rational guy that is smart in the market and takes the right decision. But there is a fiction with that, is that in my opinion, no one on earth is smart enough to do that. Because the level of complexity and the level of information you need to get to a point where you can think that you are smart enough to analyze all the data and take the right decision is just a fiction. And it's a fiction that works very well because most of the fake smart people are so sure about their smartness that they build this confidence that they are not doing things because it's irrational, but because their rationality is very appealing. But most of the time, if you are very serious about data and criticizing them, you can find weak spot in every startup. Like if you take someone that his only job is to criticize you, you can take every successful startup on earth and you will find thousands of reasons to explain why they will never work. But a startup is a miracle, and it's something people don't talk enough about. The natural state in startup lands is failure. Like statistically, that's a natural state. Like being a success in the startup land, it's a total miracle. And by the way, you know, the press is not doing a good job about that. You know, we learned that at the family. You hear about acquisition of companies in portfolio of startup, investor, blah, blah. You don't imagine how many startups are sell for €1 just to get a press release. Like it's a market. There is a marketplace for press release acquisition. I'm not joking. Like when you're in this situation, they introduce you to people that know people and they can get you a press release. So the problem is that people don't imagine how many fake success there is in the market. If you look real success in the sense of someone making a lot of cash over an acquisition, or someone building a very profitable company, or someone IPO and blah, blah, it's actually such a small fraction of company that it will be depressing if entrepreneurs are aware of that. But our theory at the family is that if you make people aware of that, they will change their mind and they will enter in a mode that they will understand that they have nothing to lose and only things to get. And if you can get people in this mindset and change their mindset from I'm worried to lose a few things I get to I'm ready to do whatever it takes to be on the success side, then it changes the odds. Because if you think about it, statistically, you can be wrong 1,000,000 of times. If you are successful only once, you can then and talk to the people all your life about that. It's one of the good things about being right once. And people will forget everything you did wrong. And by the way, that's why most successful people are so bad at giving any advice that is meaningful to anyone. Because the only thing they can explain is why they are successful. And most of the time, it's so contextual that you cannot replicate it. So it's not scientific. You have to admit that there is a huge irrational part in success that we don't control, and you need to be comfortable with that. The second thing that we are looking in people, and is very linked to determination, is courage. Courage is a mother quality of every quality, because it's very easy to be honest until you have a very good occasion to don't be honest. It's very easy to be provocative until the point where it's hard to be. I can tell you a story that... Seriously? No, I'm kidding. So I always dream to do that. I was a student doing that, So there is one story that happened in the life of the family. One day, one guy organized a dinner with a very high-level banker, CEO of one of the biggest banks in France. And the guy asked me, I don't know which question, and I say, the problem with big companies is that there is a lot of people that talk about innovation, and they still have a BlackBerry in their pocket. How can we think that they are serious? And the guy takes his BlackBerry out of his pocket and put it on the table. And I look him in the eye and say, yeah, you see? No credibility. And then he takes the BlackBerry back in his pocket. And of course, we did not get the contract. Of course, I think he was waiting apology because he's kind of used to that. But you cannot do that. You have to keep your word. That's why we record everything and put online, even when we say stupid things. Because it's very important in this world where everything is transparent to keep your courage up, and it's very important to train your courage. If you are weak on this kind of thing, you will be weak in the important decision of your life. And so being sure that people are courageous is the second thing we are looking. The third thing is flexibility. How much people are ready to change if they are presented with a new data? Determination is fine, but only stupid people don't change their mind. How much flexibility you can bring inside the process of building your company, it's a very important element. And the last thing is naughtiness. Because you cannot do something in the startup world without being a little bit naughty. Because at some point, you cannot change the way the thing works if you don't push a little bit in your way. So there's a difference between, being naughty and being bad. Like most of the time when I say that, people will say, yeah, but it's unethical, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, it's much more about having an ethics that concentrate on the thing that really matters, never hurt someone. But if you don't hurt anyone in the process, you should be ready to push the boundary. And if you are very strict and very in the rules, there is a good chance that you get killed in the process. And that's why, by the way, there is so much good hackers that became incredible entrepreneurs. It's because if you look about all the quality I described, it's something you find in the hacker ethos. The hacker culture is based on this value of naughtiness, going fast, break things, don't be apologetic, go for the truth, change your mind if you are wrong. And all of that build very good quality to be entrepreneurs. So if you are not a trained hacker, that's the kind of thing you can learn. But that's why for me, entrepreneurs and good entrepreneurs are the new artists, by the way. Because in a sense, they are doing creation that really look like art. If you look at every generation in history of art, every meaningful artist of every generation did things completely differently than the previous generation. And everybody that learned with the previous generation by being very respectful to the master, no one knows them. Because they are the people that get the prize when they are alive, but nobody remembers them. Because they do like this very classical art. So in art, there is rebellion as much that there is with hackers, as much that there is with good entrepreneurs. Being a rebel is important. You see? The screen is bored. Like I didn't even start. The second thing that is very important about building your company, and it's an element of choice for us, is are you in short term or are you in long terms? Are you thinking for the next month or are you thinking over a long period of time? One of the jokes I love to do to some VC we don't like is that I'm in 20 years, I will be younger than most of them now. So in 20 years, I will be younger than the average age of all these crappy people that raised money 10 years ago and think because of that, they have something meaningful to say to anyone. And I think that's very important to be able to project yourself over 10 years, 20 years. Nobody build overnight success in one night. Like most of the time, overnight success is years and years and years of work that somehow at some point get a tipping point. And if you don't project yourself, like if for example you don't, like one of my favorite questions is where your company will be in 10 years. You don't imagine how many entrepreneurs are unable to do that, unable to give a clear answer about that. And by the way, some entrepreneurs are very pissed off by this question because they say, it's impossible to know where I will be in 10 years. Of course it's impossible. I didn't told you to guarantee me where you will be. I just ask where you dream. Like when I was a kid, I was dreaming of being an astronaut. Like, I am an astronaut? No, of course not. I am sad? No. Will I go to space if I can? Of course, yes. But but the point is not here. The point is, do you have your imagination up to a long-term view, or are you just obsessed about how you will survive for the next week? If you are just here for the next week, you're just opportunistically driven, and so you will never win over the long term, and so it's not interesting to support you for life. And that's why it's so important that you be driven by the long term, because it's on the long term that you can build things that are lasting and that are successful. Another very important point that we learn with our company is that one of the best things to do in the startup is to fake it until make it. So I feel that there is a start of a backlash about that. Last year we got Tyrannos that fake it until make it at 4 billion valuation. So that's maybe was too much. Let's say you fake it until make it for the first 10 million of valuation, okay? And then it should be real. But joke aside, you know, it's really sad because no one talk about the reality of Tyrannos. You know, look how failure works in this world. Tyrannos is about the fail of a totally fake story about the technology. But there is 3 interesting facts to look inside. The first thing is that she has 40 investors that did multiple due diligence about the company, asking ton of documents, I'm sure, a lot of emails, a lot of talk, a lot of lawyers. And when you discover that it's fake, there is only one person responsible. Like the poor girl that is like here and everybody's like, she's a liar. You're like, it's 7 years. You are supposed to have checked things. Ah, you never? Because actually all your due diligence is bullshit? Oh, we didn't know that. Such a surprise. So the fake it until make it is not about doing things illegal. The second fact that is very interesting with Tyrannos is that from day one, it was a very bad company because it's a bad problem. Like if you look the 2 problems this company tried to solve, it's so strange. The first problem is how to take 1 drop of blood instead of blood. Like if you ask 100 sick people, are you ready to give me blood if you are sick, so we investigate why you are sick? Like how many of them will say no, just a drop? Okay, you're scared by needles. I'm scared by needles. They give me a gum and after a sweet and they put some anesthesia on my arm and it works. and I don't look. So you see, there is a lot of simple solution to this problem. And the second problem they try to solve is that on this fucking tiny drop, how do you do 1,000 tests? So nobody need 1,000 tests. Like no one is that sick, by the way. You know. So you see, like one of the problem about the fake it until make it is that maybe if Tyrannos have been more serious about the definition of problem and less in the hype, maybe will not end up that way. Because the problem is not the fact that their technology is not ready. The problem is that their technology doesn't make any sense. So of course, if you fake it until make it on something that don't make sense, you never end up by doing something real. But if you fake it until make it on something real, it's called science and innovation for a long time. Like the only way to achieve success is at some point to make people believe that it's possible. Because if from day one you don't make people believe, and it's very important they believe, there is nothing rational that will say that Google will be able to index every website in the world, or that Stripe will be able to process payment in security. Think about it. Let's take one example, Stripe. Look the fiction. You have two guys, Irish, 19 years old or 20 years old. They come and say, we will start a payment processing company and you will be secure. That's a fiction. Because the fact they achieved that is a miracle. Like the probability that two guys, 20 years old, screwed everything because they drink too much beer and come back and everything is stolen is very high. From a rational point of view, like that's the odds. But what makes them incredible is that there is a singularity that made it different. And because you're a singularity, you have to learn how to make people believe. And making people believe is not something bad. And having not everything ready is not important. What is important is that you have the confidence that over time you will be able to deliver, and that it makes sense that you deliver over time. And that's, if journalists make their job, that's what should have been the critic around Tyrannos. Not that girl, 25 years old, screwed up a scientific R&D project. No, is how is it possible that so many people threw so much money in something that doesn't make sense? That's a much more important question. We believe a lot in swag at the family. We like this word. I know it's kind of outdated now, but I have a 16 years old nephew. He told me, yeah, nobody says swag anymore. I say, yeah, I'm old. That's fine. So why we like swag a lot? Because we think that one of the way to make people believe, and by the way, I don't want to hurt anyone, but every religion in history of humankind understand that. You need entertainment, you need beautiful, you need beauty, you need emotion, you need sentiment. It's very important. Like the way you do things is as important of what you do. I know some people hate when we say that. They say it doesn't matter the way we do. What matters is the reality. Okay. So that kind of people live in a world without joy, without beauty. Most of them, by the way, look weird. Let's be very honest about that. But the very important thing is that being swag is one of the ways to respect your user. Because showing the best version of you is actually one step to the seduction process you need to have with every user. Think of it like a dating process. Everybody lies in dating. Like imagine you arrived at your first date and you tell it like it is. So imagine, hi, my name is OUSSAMA. I have a lot of trouble with my work. By the way, I work way too much. So I work in average 20 hours a day. I travel a lot. You will see me maybe 3 or 4 days a month. And by the way, in these 3 or 4 days a month, I know I will not be really here because and by the way, most of my ex are crazy and they're still chasing me, so you will have trouble and some harassment. but everything is fine. Oh, and by the way, I do video on YouTube, and a lot of people and women send me naked picture. But no worry, I will be only with you. Great first date. And of course, it doesn't make sense. Because you want, at your first date, to show the best version of you, and maybe people will discover you after a few dates. But that's fine. It's exactly the same thing as a business process. And showing the best version of you is about showing the story that makes yourself the most easy to understand. And that's something too much people in Europe don't take seriously. You know, I lived in the US, and there is something that really stuck me in the US culture, is that the talent for storytelling is incredible. So of course sometimes it's overrated. You know, it's the difference between a US entrepreneur and a Russian entrepreneur. It's the two kind of extreme in our worldwide ecosystem. The US entrepreneur will come and tell you, I have a wonderful project. It's called Teleported. Teleported is the first teleportation solution. It will revolutionize the way people move around. For only 2 billion raise, at 10 billion valuation, I will be able to bring teleportation for everyone on Earth for a cheap price in less than 1 year. Disclaimer, we don't have a product yet. Disclaimer, we don't know how to do that. Disclaimer, I will do a lot of cash out. We never know. So that's the US version. If you go in Russia, you will have a guy that will be like, hi, my name is Igor. I invented teleportation. This is my brother. He comes from St. Petersburg. But we don't know how to market that. We don't know what people will do with it. So, of course, the entrepreneurial side is on the first side. So, of course, if you are the kind of entrepreneur that don't build real product, all of that will end bad. You know, it's not like entrepreneurship is not one recipe book. You know, you can read a lot of books about that's a good way to do entrepreneurship. The 10 advice to don't fail, the 20 failure that everyone did, blah, blah, blah. You can read all of that. And it's great, by the way. You know, it's like when I was an entrepreneur 15 years ago, I had nothing of that. I had to discover everything by myself, and it was horrible. So the fact that now there is so many advice is a good thing. But what is a bad thing is thinking that all of that is a one-way recipe. It's not a one-way recipe. It's a very complicated life thing. And so like everything in life that is complicated, you need a lot of things on the way. But storytelling is a very fundamental element of that. And building beautiful storytelling and appealing to the aesthetic part of the mind of people is very important. Yeah, I did that. Another thing you have to think about, especially if you are looking for a co-founder or you are looking for a project to work on, we call that the dark matter. So it's a little bit of a geek joke. One day I read somewhere over internet, I'm not sure it's even real, by the way, maybe someone can confirm or not, is that the most part of the universe mass is invisible, and it's called dark matter. So we see a lot of mass from a modeling perspective, but we cannot touch it, and we cannot see it, and it's called dark matter. And when I read that, I had this, feeling that my job was exactly the same, is that most of the good entrepreneurs are invisible, in the sense that most entrepreneurs can come from anywhere. One of our motto at the family, it's on our website, first page, is anyone can be an entrepreneur. When people read that, it's very funny, is that you can tell who did not see Ratatouille at the way they understand that sentence. Because the people that did not saw Ratatouille, they understand everyone can be an entrepreneur. Meaning that anyone that works hard enough will be a successful entrepreneur. But it's not what we mean. What we mean is that the next entrepreneur will always come from a place and a background and a style that no one can predict. And it will always be surprising. If you go in Silicon Valley, you will see the fashion trend of every generation of entrepreneur. So, in the 90s, everybody was wearing suits because it was MBA time during the first bubble. And so there was few MBA that was successful at building Yahoo, blah, blah. So everybody was dressed like them. And then there was Mark Zuckerberg with his hoodie, and you started to see everyone wearing hoodie. One of the funny things about that is that Mark Zuckerberg did not succeed because of the hoodie. He succeeded despite the hoodie. It's a very important thing to be aware of. So you can wear a hoodie, but if it's not your thing, you will never be. And that's what makes Zuckerberg so important, is that he never gave a fuck about how he dressed, because he just wanted to be himself, and he built success his way. And that's one of the elements about being an entrepreneur. Are you driven by what other thinks, or are you driven by what you are? And sometimes what you are is not successful, but it's fine, because you will build a kind of rationality you can understand and build some decision around that. So dark matter is about how do we bring the invisible to light, and how we convince some people that will not think that they can be entrepreneur, that they can be entrepreneur because they have the right quality, even if they don't have the right style. And so too much in this entrepreneurship world is about which style do you have and which style do you fake, but it's much more important to be driven by what kind of thing you have special that no one else have before you. There is a lot of old-fashioned signals that are dead on market, and people did not realize it yet. And it's important to be aware of that. And I will give you a very controversial advice. I don't believe in mentorship. A lot of people believe in mentorship. A lot of good people believe in mentorship. But I don't. Because I think that there is something strange happening in the world, is that the world is going so fast that no one has something meaningful to say to the next generation anymore. If you look hundreds of years ago, the difference of life between your grandparents and yourself was very short. Like, you can imagine how your grandparents lived, and it can be something you can emotionally connect to. So when your grandparents give you advice, they give you advice about something that is still real. If you look in our period of time, imagine that 10 years ago, no one had any camera on their iPhone, because the iPhone did not exist. And so, look, everyone learned how to do a selfie in 10 years. World can change fast. And if something can widespread like that, it means that there is very deep things happening and shifting in society. Meaning that now you have this fraction of society and huge ontological difference between people, because we don't live in the same period of time. And one of the problems with mentoring is that you have the good mentoring and the bad mentoring. The good mentoring is about helping you to decide what you want to do based on who you are. And so good mentors, most of the time, they are mentors that are much more obsessed about understanding and asking a lot of questions. By the way, you can notice if it's a good mentor or not with a very simple tips. Do he ask questions or not? If he has a feeling to know what you should do, forget it. Because it's impossible to live in multiple time in same time. And so if you look at every moment in life, most of the people that are happy are not the people that listen to the previous generation, but there are more people that take example in their peers. And developing a peer network of people doing the same thing of you at the same time and hunting in group is much more efficient to learn fast than asking famous people that are older and they don't have a clue of your reality. I will give you a shameful example. One of the very strange things about making money in life is that you totally lose touch with the reality of life of people. And for example, I never talk money with entrepreneurs because I didn't work like the last time I got a salary in my life was 10 years ago. And most of the time when I think about how people live, for example, sometimes I'm very shamefully, I don't understand how people live with the salary they have because I don't get how they do. But when you get out of touch like that, you have to be aware of that. It's not a question of faking it. I'm very happy to be disconnected with that. Like, it's one of the best parts of my life. But it's not about me giving advice to people. Like, how can you give advice if you don't feel it, if you forget it for too long? So if you want money advice, take advice from someone that lives like you. Don't take advice from someone that is living totally in different way than you because of life opportunities. So that's something very important. So another thing, don't trust consultants. So mentorship is something, but consultant is another thing. And there is no one in the startup land that is successful making consultant work. Like I tell you, like one of the biggest wastes of any startup is when they try and start to hire people to advise them about what to do, because you have to learn everything by yourself. And I will give you a very counterintuitive lesson. Most of the time, you should never delegate what you don't know how to do. You know, most people, they do what they know, and they delegate what they don't know. But you should do the opposite. You should delegate what you know, and you should do what you don't know. Because every time you will delegate something you don't know how to do it, you will get screwed. Because you will be an easy target. You know, if you don't know how to code and you find a coder, and you will tell him, I want to change the color of the button, he will tell you it's very complicated. I need to refactor the code. And when you hear that, it's an advice that something is wrong. So it's a tip that something is wrong. So always learn to do things even if they are bad. Because when you learn to do something, you will know how you define good and what is good. And from that perspective, you will be able to take decision about how to delegate. And then you can avoid sometime to get screwed. So think about that. Like it's very important to develop this hacker ethos that you should be able to do everything. By the way, it doesn't mean forever. Of course, building a company is not about doing everything by yourself forever. It's just about doing every step yourself to be comfortable to find better people than you to do it. But you cannot know what a good people is until you did it. And then it becomes a very good judgmental thing. If you hire someone that do worse than you when you are not an expert, you know that he's a bad guy. It becomes very obvious. When you don't know, you always ask questions, or worse, you need to ask the advice and the opinion of others, and then you lose your internal rationality. Culture is much more important than process. So I know that we are in rocket land here, and I know that there is a lot of people from Rocket. And I will give you a little secret, I already told Oli, is that I think that process kills companies. And it's impossible to scale for process at early stage. Process are good for company that can be run by stupid people. But when you are at the early stage and you need smart people, process puts the smart people out. And process attract people that are less smart. And so you don't want that. And so you should be comfortable with the mess that you have not having process. You need to have KPI, for sure. You need to have target. You need to have a strong culture. And people should be able to understand why they do their work, what is the mission of the company, and how their work is linked to the mission of the company. If you're not able to do that with every employee, what do you do? Why do you do it? And how it's linked to the overall mission and how that participates to why you are here. If every employee in your organization cannot do that, then your organization is screwed. I can tell you, because it's way too much complicated to succeed without people that are smart enough to learn by imitation. And that's why process are bad, because process hide these kind of things. If you have too much process inside your company, people will do the thing inside the process. They give you the feeling that they are efficient. They give you the feeling that they know what they are doing, when actually they are just monkeys applying rules. And if that's the case, then when you will face a problem or a trouble or a crisis, and you always face crisis at the beginning of your company, and especially when they are successful, by the way, and that's when the organization is unable to take that challenge, because not flexible enough, not agile enough, not strong enough, not violent enough. So all of that come down to something that I really believe is that if you cannot see the soul of the company shining, you will know that you are in a bad company. And so, how do you define bad companies? The first characteristic of a bad company for me is companies that are obsessed about ideas. Like, ideas are commodity. You know, it's like we are in a world where information flows so much that there is no sense of being obsessed or secret or safeguard about what is your ideas or what makes you different. Like, that doesn't make sense anymore. It's not about being cool. It's just that the best product always wins at the end. So I know it's controversial because there's a lot of crappy product that win. So understand that sentence very well. I'm not saying that bad products don't win. There's a lot of bad products that make successful company. Look, Microsoft. I mean, good example. But what I'm saying is that best product succeed. So it's not the only way to succeed, but it's one of the most risk-averse way. Because if you build good product at somehow, even if you are bad at everything, and if you are scrappy and cash savvy, and if you have a long of time, you will figure out something. Let's say that being an entrepreneur is like passing an exam, and that exam has a time limit that is defined by yourself. That's what is entrepreneurship. If you ask everyone in this room to pass a math exam, and you give everyone 10 minutes to pass it, maybe one guy will succeed. But if you give infinite amount of time to everyone, and you have no other choice in your life than solving that problem, everyone will figure out the solution. Some of you will maybe take 20 years. But somehow, at some point, you will figure out. That's a really deep belief of the family about company building. So building a company is about putting yourself in a long time period enough so you are able to find out the solutions that are not obvious. And that's why building good product is a good strategy, because if you build good product and save time and get a lot of time on the way, you are on the right path to build something good. Pay attention to fake growth. So, you know, we love growth hacking at the family. I know the buzzword will be killed enough soon. I hope someone will invent a new word. So, like, I don't know. I don't have it. But, but for sure, no growth hacking in the world can go against having a super fan base and having a real growth of people that recommend company word of mouth. And that's the difference between missionary and mercenary, is that people that really believe in what they do, they always find people to believe. And think about it, it always starts in small group. It's better to have a very small set of users that are ready to die for you than a large set of users that don't really know why you are here and that find it's okay or cool or fine. Like, that's not what you want. You want people that are crazy enough to be ready to die and live for you. It doesn't mean it's about being perfect. Often when I do talk and I explain that good product works, blah, blah, I always end up with what I call the crazy, scary, timid entrepreneur. You know, the people that work 10 years on the product to do something incredible, but actually it's not incredible because no human ever use it. So being good at product means launching often, being on market, talking with people. Because a good product is never defined by your opinion, is always defined by the market opinion. And that's something important. You should put your ego aside. And if you think that you are good enough to judge what is a good product, you're a fool. Like, the only people that can judge is outside. Is the people that have nothing to lose. You know, why every parent thinks that their kid is cute and beautiful? It's because they have perfect. You have a kid. Yeah, I feel it. I know. Okay. Okay, you are a perfect child. Why? Because first, like that, no parents keep their child. So it's good that we believe that from a biology perspective. But also because they have no choice. They spend so much time with the kid that of course they see things that no one else see. If you look the kid of others, you can be very, very much able to judge. And especially if it's stranger kid. Because you have no attachment. And then you can say, oh my God, this kid is ugly. But that kind of honest feedback can come only from the outside. It cannot come from the inside. You spend way too much time with your product and yourself to be able to judge if it's a good product or bad product. So building something incredible is not about building something perfect. It's about building something that people love. And the only way to make people love something is to spend a lot of time with them and that they are used to that. And if you achieve that, you achieve something that is very beautiful, is that you don't just build a company, but you build something that people remember. And so let me just talk about that, and you will understand what is important for us as a family. Is that for us as a family, it's not just a question of financial success or revenue or all of that, because we don't have that much control over that. You know, it's if you look every successful company at the family, most of the time no one will have believed that they will be successful. Like it's always surprising. And if you look all our failure, they are always company that we believe so much inside them. Like by the way, it's even become a joke internally that now when we believe in a company, we should downgrade the valuation internally. Like, you know, we ask and we say, do you believe? Oh, fuck, yeah, okay, it's done. So, joke aside, it's really, really hard to build something meaningful. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes a certain kind of personality. And the problem is that we are in an ecosystem where everyone wants to become entrepreneurs. And that's a problem, because we are not all equal around that. You know, one of the first time I noticed that is when I heard this story that traumatized me, is that the Airbnb founders lived in Airbnb for 3 years without an apartment of their own for 3 years. You imagine the kind of commitment? Like, how do you want to win with a copycat of Airbnb against that? You can throw money in AdWords, you can throw money in competition. At the end of the day, they will find a way to kill you. Because living 3 years in Airbnb apartment all time long is just being nuts. Like there is nothing good about that. For your life, for your health, for everything. Like imagine a relationship. Yeah, so sweetie, which apartment do you want this week? It's like it's a level of commitment that is totally nuts. And that's the kind of nuts people that build company like that. So if you think in terms of career perspective, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to fake it and think that you are this kind of people and try to do it even if you like to have your own place? Or do you want to go and work for this kind of crazy people? Because what do you prefer? 0.5% of Airbnb or 100% of a startup that will never go somewhere? And that's why this question is so important for us. Because every time we look someone in the eyes, we ask ourselves the question, this guy will do the crazy stuff that no one is ready to do? And if yes, whatever we think about his idea, we will take it. You know, I think I learned that the first month at the family with one of the first company we backed. That founder was in a business trip, and his wife was pregnant, and she delivered, And so she called him and said, do you short your business trip? And he asked why. Sorry, I didn't get it. Why I would short my trip. And you know, on the personal side, I was shocked. You know, I was like, oh my God, you really told your wife that? But on the investor dark side, I was smiling. Because you need that kind of nuts. Because who do you think any competitor can win against that? It's like going in a street fight and being in face of someone, and you go and fight for your life, and the first question you ask is, what are the rules? Are we able to take weapons? How it works? Of course, if you are in this kind of mindset, you will lose. If you're in a street fight, what matters is not how strong you are. It's not how smart you are. It's how mean you are. How much you are be able to do whatever it takes to survive. And the problem is that, of course, for the sanity and the savior of our society, that should be a minor act. Like if the majority of people was like that, it will be a hell. Like, you know, most of the entrepreneurs at the family, I love them and I really love them as friends, but I wish to no one to marry them. Really, girls included. So it's like so strange to have like this dichotomy between having exceptional people from a professional side, but not that easy to manage on the personal side. But that's fine, because you don't need a lot of them. And my theory is that the number of companies that will be created in the next 5 years will be hugely bigger than the number of companies that have been created in the last 10 years. And because the barrier to the entry is getting lower and lower, and because everything is so easier, and because launching a company is becoming so commoditized, that the only one that will win is this kind of people. Maybe in the first generation of entrepreneurs, some weak people can survive because the competition was not so high. So the kind of entrepreneur that do it for the money, or do it for being famous or successful, or because they saw a market opportunity, like all these people, for sure, they had survived until now. But pay attention, looking backwards is rarely a good way to understand where we are going forward. If you look forward, I believe that the ones that will succeed are the ones that are able to put their life inside the project, where there is no difference between their life and their project. And that's the kind of entrepreneur we want to back. You know, and I know it can sound tough, harsh, and all of that, but it's fine, because again, it's not for everyone, but anyone can do it. Thank you very much.
Que la famille